Hey, everybody. I'm Troy, your resident host, and Michael Channel. And this is our test broadcast. How many people are here? I can't see how many people are here, but if you are in the chat, pop in a hello so I know you're here and so we can wave to you. And to get the show started, I'm going to introduce the rest of the panel. So, along with me today is Bobby, better known to a lot of you as BF Bobby.
Hey everyone, I'm Bobby, BF Bobby from Brooklyn, New York. I'm an artisan in C2E2.
And we also have Ro. Many of you know this lovely soul.
Hey, my lovelies. I am Ro from Lima, Peru. I am an artisan cast priest from C2E7.
And next up, we have Caitlin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caitlin, and I am a sage from C2E2.
And finally, last but not least, our lovely Connor.
Hello, greetings, fair viewers. I am Connor. I am a sage from Cadre 1, Entity 2, broadcasting from Philadelphia, birthplace of the United States.
Woo! Good. So, how many here are excited and nervous for our test broadcast?
Yes.
So,
The
for
jitters.
those of you who are here going through this with us, I am so thankful and I really appreciate it. And any feedback you have after the show would be great, because we want to make this the best it can possibly be when we go live in February. And so let's get the show started. We're going to start off with a segment that we call Michael Views the News. I love those. So Michael's Views the News is going to be a segment where we look at current events or anything happening that the community is interested in and getting Michael's perspective on it. They're just going to be little tidbits of what's happening around the world and see if we can get some insight into some of these events that affect our lives. And so first up, we thought we'd focus on something inspiring like Amanda Gorman at the inauguration. Oh, I've got to share my screen. This is all new to me. Oh, no, we got it. All right. Amanda's running everything behind the scenes, everybody, by the way. So I can relinquish some control here.
Different Amanda.
Huh? What, Connor?
Our Amanda, not Amanda Gorman.
No, different Amanda.
Oh,
Amanda
different
Gorman
Amanda,
is not
yes.
running things behind the scenes.
All right. So I'm going to read a little blurb that sets up what we're going to talk about and then Michael's response. So, did the young poet Amanda Gorman, a 22-year-old from Los Angeles, capture what it is to manifest essence while she spoke at Joe Biden's inauguration? She is quoted to have stolen the show, and her poem, The Hill We Climb, moved audience members to tears during the inauguration. While we watched her speak, it felt as if she was truly in alignment with her essence and life task, not only by the words she recited, but the clarity in what she was saying. She has really stood out with her work while being so young, all while facing her own adversity as a young Black woman at Harvard with a speech impediment. And I forgot to do this. In 2017, she won the National Youth Poet Laureate, and she just graduated from Harvard. That's just the tip of her mounting iceberg for all she's accomplished. Now, I pose this to Michael as a general, like, what do you have to say about Amanda Gorman? And this is the response we got from Michael. This fragment is in a muse position for a great many people and is a 5th level old priest cast sage from Cadre 12, Entity 4, a realist attitude with the goal of dominance in power mode with emotional centering, intellectual part. What can be witnessed in her delivery of her poem at the inauguration and most any other delivery of her art at any other time in any other form is indeed essence manifestation and fulfillment of a life task. This is an old fragment who decided to experiment with overleaves that are usually left to younger souls and is showing how these overleaves can be used by older souls in new and meaningful ways. No overleaf is tied to or limited to any soul age, but there does tend to be patterns of preference to suit the positions that a fragment expects to explore in a life. With the shift in paradigm toward a more mature world, overleaves that have been primarily popular with younger souls, are now being repurposed and reclaimed, so to speak, for a new world. Panel, what do you think of that?
Well, I'll start off just by saying, because I was telling Troy earlier about this. You know, I think compared to most people here, both as part of the panel and who are probably viewing in the live chat, I'm relatively new to the Michael teachings, having learned of it through my relationship with Troy. And so I'm always still trying to find ways of validating my own understanding of the teachings and knowledge of the teachings. And I always get frustrated with myself because we'll talk about a celebrity or we'll talk about one of our favorite actors or something like that. And I have a hunch as to what I think their overleaves are, but I don't say it out loud because I'm too self-conscious. And then Troy will just, you know, in happenstance or something, just bring it up. And I was like, damn it, that's what I was going to say she was. And the other day we were talking about her, and in my mind, I was like, I'm also pretty good at knowing role or knowing the two components, but not knowing which one's the casting and which one's the role. That sometimes I still struggle with. But I thought to myself, there's definitely some Sage in there. But I also feel like she feels very comfortable and confident, like speaking to large groups and playing that that larger communal role. And so I thought that there was some priest in there as well. And I thought it was going to be priest cast Sage, but I didn't say it to Troy. And then I read his channeling, and I was like, damn it, why didn't I say it to Troy first to prove that, to validate it? But
That's okay. I believe you. I do
but
not.
it was very affirming to me to know that I was on the right track after I read the channeling about her, because that's how she came across to me. So I just wanted to start with that.
I literally do the exact same thing with every celebrity. I'm always, is it this? Is it this? But I think that's how I feel too. Like I'm constantly I'm still fairly new to TLE's community and still making some like headway and connecting with people. But I feel like I'm constantly trying to validate it through my own perception of who people are, and Amanda Gorman being one of them. I mean,
well, was anybody surprised by the overleaves?
No, not particularly.
I was a little surprised by dominance and power mode. I don't know if anyone wants to explore that or explain that to me, why that makes sense from your point of view.
It doesn't. That's why there's actually extra stuff in there from Michael, because I was like, that can't be right. She's an old soul. And then Michael's like, well, that's because older souls are starting to go back to these overleaves that put you in positions of power and influence that have been left to younger souls to use because old souls aren't interested in that. But with the shift to the mature soul paradigm, we're starting to realize, oh, those can be used in a different way. They don't have to be used for oppression and division and all these negative ways. There can be something meaningful brought. The dominance is just leadership, and power is just presence. So it's really interesting to see that we're going to probably see these overleaves more often in older souls in the younger generation, because they're taking steps to become leaders.
Yeah, Janet Elam was, you mentioned presence a second ago, Troy, and Janet saying, I see the power mode. It's about presence, and she has it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the muse position particularly, it seems spot on. I'm looking at a transcript right now where Michael actually gives the specific definition of what the muse position is.
Okay.
And yeah, they say, your muse can usually be described by a word or a phrase, and that can often be found in those people who inspire you the most in your life. A muse can be represented by anything and everything as long as it embodies that quality. So if your muse is freedom, for instance, you may find Martin Luther King Jr. is an embodiment of your muse. It's one of the most abstract of the support circle positions.
That's a really good point. And I didn't ask this, and I'm sure we could probably figure it out if we thought about it and wouldn't even need to ask, but what's the muse quality that she's representing? I would like to get that defined, but I didn't prepare for that. But that's a good point, because she's embodying whatever it is that's inspiring to people. Does anybody have a suggestion what they think that muse would be?
I don't know, reclaiming power, maybe? Something along those lines.
Mhm.
That makes sense. And
I
that
like
ties into actually what she was saying in her poem that day, too.
Yeah, and she's
Well,
also from the Enlightenment cadre. I think she's 12, right? From that
yeah.
cadre usually come those teachers and very influential souls.
Now, I wonder if
Jean?
that's our energy ring or a different
Oh,
energy ring.
yeah, good
I would
I
point.
think
assume
it's ours.
ours, but
I think it's ours,
Yeah.
but you're
It's
right. I
ours.
didn't ask.
Mhm.
Jean,
it
I'd
was
like
also
to
Michael's.
respond. I'd like to respond to Jean's comment that there's not. That's why Michael said no overleaf is tied to or limited to any soul age, but there does tend to be patterns of preference to suit the positions that a fragment expects to explore in a life. So when young souls are pushing for power and pushing for dominance or leadership positions, then they're going to be taking on those overleaves. So when an older soul that's not interested in power and competition and the young soul paradigm that has been in place, they're going to set those aside more often. So it's not that they're tied to soul ages, it's just that there's preferences.
Troy, Uma brought up something. She said she was a little surprised to hear that Amanda Gorman comes from Cadre 12 Entity 4. So I don't know if anyone wanted to share thoughts about that.
I can't comment on that because I don't know enough about it. And that we'll just have to explore that in future channeling.
Yeah, I would like to maybe chime in here because, yeah, for example, I remember when I got channeled some profiles from BTS, this K-pop group that is super influential, and they happen to also be from Cadre, I think 11 or 12, and you wouldn't expect that from them maybe. So I was thinking they could be from Cadre 1 or 2 maybe, or the beauty cadre that is 3, I think, or 5. But yeah, so I think I happen to expect that. I think in a way I was thinking, oh, she could be that because she's super powerful, and I saw the reactions in the comments in Facebook, and people were moved, like really moved. So yeah,
It's the same cadre as Emma Gonzalez, I think.
Oh, see, yeah, I think
Mhm.
certain cadres and entities just have certain themes, and these are 11 and 12 have like really strong, influential themes on a larger scale than normal, I think.
Well, and like Uma is saying, well, I was just reading that Jesus and Buddha were from 12 of the previous energy ring.
Oh, see, yeah, because that's the way the energy rings work. But we're not going to go into that today because that'll be a whole other topic. But let's move on to the next topic.
Just one last thing, Maureen just wanted to also add. I told Uma that Amanda Gorman is a priest cast sage. Maya Angelou was also a priest cast sage,
nice.
7th level. So
that's interesting.
And she's probably, or I think she said that Maya Angelou is one of Amanda's obviously role models and inspirations.
Oh,
too.
that makes sense. That's really cool. I really like that. All right, so moving on to the next piece of news. The question was posed, how does Michael view social media as a representative for our collective consciousness? Is the Reddit attack on stock markets a reflection of a transition to a mature soul age in its relationship with chaos and harmony? Can Michael clarify how misinformation can be treated in a country where it may be a part of the mindset in half of its participating voting citizens? How did it get this bad? So I posed that to Michael and I felt like a surprising response, and something about it was a little comforting to me. I don't know. But here's what they had to say. We see social media as a true real-time reflection of collective and individual consciousness and its evolution. It is a reflection of another layer of the astral plane, or the emotional ocean of humanity. It is a lot of noise that one must learn to manage, sort, and then focus on what matters and what is meaningful and useful to you. But one must also learn what matters and what is meaningful to them. And then one must learn to manage, sort themselves to contribute what is deemed to matter and what is meaningful and useful. Wait, let me read that again. It is a lot of noise that one must learn to manage, sort, and then focus on what matters and what is meaningful and useful to you. Oh, but one must also learn what matters and what is meaningful to them, to others. And then one must learn to manage and sort themselves to contribute what is deemed to matter and what is meaningful and useful. The true state of collective consciousness is an ocean of noise, but there are very real patterns at work. And as your essence evolves, so does its capacity for managing, sorting, and contributing to create harmonies rather than noise. This is true on an individual and collective level, but it's also true in social media. As one dives into that ocean of noise, it can be overwhelming. To protect oneself from all of the noise, the focus often shifts away from managing and sorting the incoming noise and shifts towards contributing. But this only adds to the noise. And if one has not sorted out what matters and is meaningful, wait, this is a test broadcast. To protect oneself from all the noise, the focus often shifts away from managing and sorting the incoming noise and shifts towards contributing. But this only adds to the noise if one has not sorted out what matters and is meaningful. What you end up with is a lot of noise and no real listening. You end up with whatever makes the most noise and convincing you that it is what is meaningful and useful. This is how misinformation, lies, and cults grow out of the noise that an individual happens to find without any attempt to sort or manage it. It is loud, therefore it must matter. The language of love is expected to be quiet, inviting, and non-confrontational. The language of fear is known as loud, seductive, and confrontational. The truth is that no rules have ever been set or assigned to these states and their languages. This is why fear can take hold of so many, because it can and does use the language of quiet, inviting, and non-confrontational. But as more people have learned to manage, sort, and contribute to the harmonies over the noise, you are finding more people being comfortable with the language of love breaking out of its arbitrary and impotent confinements and being loud, seductive, and confrontational. In the same way that the older souls like Amanda Gorman and several politicians are taking back their power through what have been co-opted and arbitrarily assigned to younger souls as overleaves in positions of power, so too are older souls reclaiming the power of love through its loud, seductive, and confrontational voice to cut through the noise. This is what you are seeing in the Redditor movement. There will be more.
Mic drop.
I am so sorry for how poorly I read that. I was processing it as I read it and was doing a terrible job, so I apologize. But hopefully that got through. What do you think, panel? Take it away.
I had a question. One of the sections that you read, Michael, they said, this is how misinformation, lies, and cults
sorry
grow.
about that, Amanda.
This is how misinformation, lies, and cults grow out of the noise that an individual happens to find without any attempt to sort or manage. It is loud, therefore it must matter. And I was wondering, I was trying to think about it in terms of positive and negative poles within our overleaf structure. And would it be oversimplifying and overgeneralizing to assume that if people do subscribe to some of these things, if they're drawn in, is it because they're leaning towards the negative pole, or can people be optimally performing in the positive pole but still get sucked in by misinformation or more cultish ways of thinking? Like, do you already have to be in a state of
I think you do.
delusion or
I think you do. I think you have to be receptive in that, or at least not doing the work of filtering for you to be scooped up in that. Definitely. And I don't think it's always something that people are aware of. Like, they don't know. They're raised in a certain environment that promotes that kind of thinking, like religions or religious families or sheltered and insular communities where there's no other input. And so they go in the direction that's already been handed to them, and then they're primed to be receptive to it, to the noise that's loud, that's confirmation bias.
Interesting.
That was a good question.
I would think you would have to be. If you were in the positive poles, wouldn't you be naturally verifying information that's coming into your world? So I would think you wouldn't have any instabilities to which a cult could appeal
Right.
if you had a healthy frame of mind already. So yeah, I don't think positive poles are compatible.
I don't think so either. But I think that intelligence, status, all that stuff is moot. Like anybody can be swept up in it, regardless of. That's why we see it happen to smart people, because it's not about their intelligence; it's about where they are in their receptivity and bias towards and negative poles that let these misinformation and false truths become reality.
Well,
and
and
a
I
lot of
guess
people who
I was going to say, I guess,
Yeah, take it away.
you do, a lot of people are often already in a wounded or saddened or depressed state, or they're in an insecure moment in their life already, which I guess probably means that there's some negative pole leaning already occurring. And it's then when sometimes they're preyed upon, or people seek them out because they're more malleable, they're more impressionable when they're in those kinds of life circumstances.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, that I thought was helpful in this for me was, and this is something I've been learning too, because of comments that I see when people speak up, and then people are told, like, stop being angry, stop being hostile, stop being, disrupting. And I really like that this says the language of love is expected to be quiet, inviting, and non-confrontational. The language of fear is known as loud, seductive, and confrontational. The truth is that no rules have ever been set or assigned to these states and their languages. And then it goes on to say, this is why fear can take hold of so many, because it can and does use the language of quiet, inviting, and non-confrontational. That is so true, because when I'm in a group of people who are discussing, like, racism, for instance, and all these racists are talking calmly and, like, they're just so calm and cool, and they think that's the upper hand. And I think people think that, like, if somebody's enraged because somebody's being racist, they're just trouble. You need to ignore them and shut them up. That's why fear ends up taking hold of so many people, because it's calm, it's quiet, it's inviting, non-confrontational, and people think that's the better way to go. We're primed to go in that direction.
I read an article from a QAnon survivor, quote unquote, who bought into it and then subsequently left. And what they were saying was part of the appeal is that misinformation like that, it offers simple explanations for a complex world. Incorrect explanations, obviously, but simple explanations to a mind that's looking for something to latch onto.
You guys, we're doing really well on time, and we're having good discussions. I really appreciate this.
I've been tracking the time, don't worry.
So, some people have commented. I hope there's a transcript for this, because it's a lot to take in when I'm reading it. We're going to refine that. Moonfeather and Uma commented on this. I would like to say I'm going to work on that, because in the test broadcast, we're realizing, like, how much is too much to read and sit through, and I don't want people to do that. So I'll find a better way to present those segments and those details. So rest assured, I'm on it.
And Uma has a great question. Do you think
scrolling text, maybe?
Do you think people who completed the fourth internal monad in the positive pole are as seducible?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, because finishing an internal monad doesn't mean you don't fall back into the negative poles if you're overleads. It just means you made it through a rite of passage. So I think you could still be as vulnerable after that. Probably less vulnerable, because the fourth internal monad is about defining yourself on your own terms. And so that's kind of a lot of work to do, to become conscious of your choices and how you see yourself. And so it probably helps. But I think you could still be. Oh, we've got another comment.
Connor, you were talking about QAnon a second ago, and Brian says, didn't Anderson Cooper do an interview with a former QAnon person who apologized to Anderson Cooper for thinking that he ate babies? I read
that about an hour ago. That's absolutely true.
I just had a fellow gamer tell me that he's dealing with the problems with his family because he's progressive, and his family is convinced that he eats babies. They literally yell at him that he needs to stop. Like, they really believe this. What is wrong?
We'll do two more quick highlights before we move on to the next segment. But Diane says, Tex says conspiracies are usually made up of a series of half-truths with an untrue conclusion.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
And then sorry, go ahead, Connor.
That's a full truth.
There was another article I'd read from a woman who went down the QAnon rabbit hole and later left, but she said what got her down that rabbit hole was Jeffrey Epstein's murder. Well, suicide. She said she was convinced it was a murder, and that, there's, who knows for sure, but that's what got her down that rabbit hole, something that seems semi-reasonable, and from there it's just an incremental digging yourself further in.
I saw, before we read this next comment, I did see a tier of conspiracy theories going around, and the Epstein one was on the lower tier because it's like a reasonable, rational question versus some of these other ones, like progressive.
Pizzagate. Right. Yeah, and Maureen says, yes, a fourth level old entity mate of mine who's drank a fair bit of Kool-Aid has led a sheltered life. She wouldn't see it that way, but I do. There has been no one with the quote-unquote checks and balances.
Yeah, I think one of the words... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, bro, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the worst manifestations, I think, of that is, when we are both white supremacists, racist, and also new age people, and it's super scary what can happen there because it's like this weird mix of, so they're with crystals and yoga, but still being, racist, homophobes, transphobes, and I'm like horrified because no,
I was really shocked when I saw it leaking into the wellness and new age community.
Yes.
Until I realized, there's a lot of problematic things in the new age and wellness community that set people up to just blindly accept things. That's why I commented recently on a post on TLE that channeling shouldn't be like immediately received as with gratitude and respect. It's like, hell no, you guys need to question that shit. All right, so let's wrap up and move on to our topic. So our topic talk is going to be a focus on an actual subject that we can explore in depth with each other and with the viewers. Today, since we're doing a test broadcast, it's going to be excerpts from the most recent State of the Planet transcript, and we're just going to read little excerpts and then discuss how we responded to that, what we think of it, ask the audience if they have any feelings about it, and then we'll go from there. So, Connor, you're up.
All right. All right, folks. So what the segment we're going to be starting with here is close to the beginning of the State of the Planet transcript, and it follows patterns of transformation, pivotal times, acceleration, ascendance, vibrational fluctuations, etc., are happening regularly. They are not energies that sweep through a plane, and if you are lucky enough and awake enough, you can catch a ride. They are energies that grow and evolve and flow in ways that reflect the growth, evolution, and flow of humanity and human sentience. Your growth, evolution, awareness, and awakeness must exist first. You are not awakened by events, you are awakened to events.
All right, panel. What do you think about that?
I love it. Because... Oh, go ahead, Connor.
All right. Well, I like it. It's empowering because events like what we've been dealing with for the past few weeks, or for the past few years, even, it's not unique to modern day. It's similar events have been happening all the time. So it's not that an event happens and boom, that's what gives us our power back. It's it puts the power back in our hands. We are waking up at our own pace, and these just so happen to be the events that coincided with humanity shrugging off a little more of its old sleepiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. we're not awakened by events, we awaken to events. Because if we were awakened by events, I feel like we would be playing a more passive role in our own lives, letting exterior things sort of be the catalytic converter, so to speak. Whereas if you already have that built as part of your DNA and you observe something on the outside, right, it might trigger it or more connect you to it more intimately. But I love the idea, the notion that it's always been a part of you. It begins with you. I feel like you were saying empowerment. I feel like you have a lot more ownership over it in that way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, the power of choice. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, being awakened by events, that concept, it seems kind of, if that were true, it would seem like things happen because they're destined to. You know, like this event happens, it like some god made this event happen specifically to wake you up. That just doesn't sound right. That starts leaning into destiny, and you know,
Well, it's also funny. Like if we were awakened by events, we'd be really awake by
Yeah.
I mean, look at our history. What has happened in our history? We should be like ascended masters by now because of what's happened. But the Awakened 2 events I like because a lot of us have been alive our whole lives and are just waking up to the magnitude of racism and the pervasiveness of it and the concepts like white privilege and gender identity. These things they're not new. We're not being awakened by those events. We're being awakened to them. And I really like that because it kind of helps you to take responsibility for the future when things are happening, to be like, oh, maybe I should pay attention and wake up to something that I might learn from this, instead of it just being something slowly, trudgingly, like wear you down and you eventually wake up.
Yeah. Delphi says, be awakened by events. Sounds super disempowering. And Amira says, a lot of us, but not all.
Hey, you guys.
And then Jean earlier said, I am really experiencing my inability to hear things that are read aloud. I can hear things that are being talked about, but not those that are read.
Jean, that's a good thing to know because we're going to be working on that. But unfortunately, there are things that are going to have to be read during the show. So we'll have to have some of it. But we'll keep you entertained in between. Did anybody else have any comments about that? No, not in the chat. I meant panel. No? Okay. Because I will say one more thing. I really like this too, because a lot of what I came across when I first started exploring metaphysical concept is all these influences that supposedly are the things that, like Connor was saying, are the things that kind of evolve you. Like, oh, we're in a vibrational period. Oh, we're passing through this ring in the universe. Oh, the planets are aligned. And it's like, well, those things might be supportive or reflective, but they are not what wakes us up. We have to do that work to wake up.
Yeah, Brian says, Michael definitely emphasizes not just choice, but really our own role and individual responsibility in the events in our life.
Word. Okay, Ro, you're up.
Okay. Next segment says, over the past 5 years, there has been an imbalance in how one cares. Some responded to events by asking how to take care of everyone else, leaving themselves out of the equation and growing exhausted, depressed, and lonely. Some responded to events by asking how to care better for themselves, leaving others out of the equation and growing exhausted, depressed, and lonely. True care is a circuit that brings care for others and the self.
Comments, panel? Did we lose Caitlin?
She's having some power issues, seems.
I don't
She's
see her.
sharing the chat. Yes, she says her Wi-Fi has to reboot.
Oh, okay. All right. So if we get to the Caitlin and she's not back, I'll read that one. So what do you guys think about that? Where do you think you fall on the spectrum of taking care of yourself to the point of losing connection to other people versus being worried about everybody else to the point of forgetting to take care of yourself? Where do you guys think you fall? on that, if not in the middle.
Yeah, for me, I suppose, yeah, considering the past 5 years, it probably leaned closer towards the self-care. I've always been that way. Regardless. I don't think it leaned too far, though, because yeah, I did maintain my connections with my friends. I didn't really lose anybody. Maybe even pulled people a bit closer than before.
Ro, what about you?
Well, I'm like sometimes dun, dun, dun. And
You're a
I
metronome.
realized, yeah. Well, 2020 was
I'm good.
like I really felt.
Wait.
Oh, hey, Caitlin, you're back. Yes, we have you here.
Welcome back.
Sorry about that. My
Welcome
whole room
back.
went out.
Wow.
I would say that earlier in my life, I think I often was more outward, and I was making sure the people around me were cared for at my own expense. And I think that had a lot to do with my own insecurities, though, and not being outwardly expressive of what my needs and what was important to me. But as I've gotten older, it's really shifted in the opposite direction, and I've been more attentive to self-care and making sure that I'm meeting my own needs. Which is interesting because of my server casting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we both have
My
that.
role is like being, priest is like sometimes I feel like I have to be there for people. Like it's something like it's like on my DNA, and I can't, like avoid it, but I can work with it, and know that I have to matter to myself as well. Not just matter to people or be needed, but being here for me and loving myself as I am, having time for rest, for decompressing just by myself, and because I growing up I also was like taught and imprinted that I had to be be very caring for others, be very generous and all that. I think that's also a cultural thing here in Latin America for women too, in the matriarchy. I don't know how to say that, but it's like patriarchy, but the women here. But yeah, I had to shed all that away and find my true self and get empowered. And
there are some interesting comments coming through the chat. Anla, I think it's Anne, says, I lean towards self-care too, Connor, but I even rekindled some old friendships during the plague. And I think that's interesting because I think our definition of self-care and true care probably has changed over the past year in terms of the accessibility of loved ones to us. I cannot care for them in the same way that I'm used to, but have we been inventive and creative in demonstrating that love and care for one another in new ways? Maureen says, sometimes it's not lack of awareness, it's much easier to join into a movement that is intensifying and growing.
Oh, that's referring back to the
that's going back to the internet, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Uma, I think if you have a human in your home, you do both, but many live alone and don't have any human contact.
That's a good point.
Yeah, fair. I have a roommate.
It does make a difference. And I do not take that for granted. I mean, this little fella right there is just down the hall. So it's good company. But we also are we have our own space too. So I'm a hybrid introvert extrovert. And so I don't mind being alone and I don't mind my downtime, but I also need people. I love people. I hate them too, but I love them.
Right,
and
I'm
often the recipient of his needing people. During the pandemic, I'm the sole recipient of his needing people.
You are people.
But I also wanted to say that for me, my inclination was towards being so angry on behalf of so many people who are suffering that it just spiraled me into depression and isolation, and I just didn't even know what to do with myself because there was nothing I could do. But I had all these feels, and I had to learn how to be like, okay, what can I control? What can't I control? What can I do today to be a part of humanity without hating everybody?
I really liked Amira's comment here. I've been working on balancing this. I was kind of raised to be codependent, so I've been choosing life circumstances that allow me to be caring while giving people their shit back, so to speak.
Oh, I like that too.
And then she
Boundaries.
says, challenge me to give people their shit back before it consumes me,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes. Very
Mhm.
good, Amira.
And-
High five on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bobby
Yes.
cracked me up. Put your own oxygen mask on first.
That's good.
Take care of yourself before you help someone beside you.
That's what I was doing. I was going down with the plane, and I'm like, "Hey, everybody, I'll help you." And then I'm like dying on the floor with no oxygen.
Diane says, I think I've learned too much. I've leaned too much towards self-care in the past, and I'm learning to take care of others.
Oh, that's really nice to hear from that perspective too. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's stay on track. Bobby, you're up.
Okay. This is the next excerpt from the State of the Planet. Each of you is a tornado of events with multidimensional hurricanes of emotion and thought. In your best of times, you are still these things. Our point being that you need not wait for the planets to align or for energies to converge or the right overleaves to emerge for a year, or even for global events to explode or resolve before you allow yourselves to live and love and be with each other in ways that matter as much as they can matter to you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that first part could probably use some like heavy metal guitars.
Yeah.
Something in the background. Yeah, when they get poetic, they get poetic.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say we're not poetic, but come on, we don't know.
I think that's probably,
Right.
when they're using a channel, they're using the bank of whatever is in there, and they're probably like, I'm probably like influencing some of that accidentally, but go ahead and use my skills.
Yeah, I love that when students ask those questions that trigger those responses from Michael that sound like super packed with information, but also with that love and beauty and
I love that
I
too.
really love them. It's an art, as they say, asking these questions.
So I think if this is in the context for this comment was in the State of the Planet, and I think it has to do with some people. I don't know if it was a part of a question and answer, but some people think like, oh, this year's overleaves mean this. That means I can finally get relief, or along those lines. And I think this was basically saying like, you don't have to wait for anything. Like we can matter to each other and take care of each other and step up when we're ready, when we can, and we don't have to wait for these things to be in alignment or perfect for us to make a difference.
And it kind of ties back to the excerpt that Connor read, where we don't have to. It's not. We don't wait. We don't sit and wait for the events to bring something out of us, right? Like it matters because it was already in you, and so you don't have to wait for like the convergence of planets or the exploding hurricanes or volcanoes that Michael's talking about, right? Like, I think to allow yourselves to live in love and show that to one another, it always begins with you.
Well, it also matters regardless of what's happening. And Uma has a comment. Would you highlight the 444?
Yeah, it's like what they said about not waiting for the
Infinite soul.
Infinite soul.
That's the abbreviation people use. Yeah, I think that's all right. Oh, sorry, Ramona was up there bothering me. Yeah, a lot of people are like, when is the infinite soul getting here? When is the infinite soul going to be getting here? Like it was going to rescue us. And that's not the way it works. And so we don't have to wait for that to take care of ourselves and rescue each other. High five, Uma. All right, Caitlin.
All right. And this is the next section, the next segment from our State of the Planet. The question that was posed for this segment: the tremendous divisions between sides in our society must mean that each side sees something to fear in the other sides. What new concepts, perspectives would help each side begin to work toward living more easily with the other sides? And this was the response. The division here is mostly in terms of inclusion versus exclusion. One side is all about inclusion, but is forced into implementing and experiencing exclusion to protect themselves, while the other side, quotes, is all about exclusion and feel forced into implementing and experiencing inclusion. One side legitimately fears being harmed, while the other side irrationally fears being harmed. The only solution for the exclusionary side to gain more experience with those whom they refuse to include. This can be done rather rapidly if there is shared, common, and safe ground to explore relationships. This is why a homophobic pastor can suddenly change his heart and mind if he finds his child is gay. It is also of note that when religion is removed from the equation, so is division. As religion dies from society, so does division. And religion is dying.
And the world cheers. Well, what did you guys think about that as far as sides? This whole thing about, oh, we're so divided right now. What did you think about Michael's perspective of what that looks like from a higher perspective?
I'm wondering if we're used to viewing our world in such a binary way, a bipolar way, like we exist on exact opposite sides from one another in everything, like male, female, Democrat, Republican, like it's, and a lot of times when we, and I'm not trying to downplay any of the harsh, true divisions that are out there, because there are harsh ones, and you should definitely be on one side, not the other side of those divisions. But in some ways, when we see that we're at odds with other people, I feel like a lot of the tension and the disparity is because our lens is to think they are directly across from us. They have no connection to us whatsoever. There are just 2 points. But sometimes I feel like our perspective is what feeds into our feeling that we have no way to connect with them. If there are other things about the different points of view, if we were to explore those, would you realize that maybe you're not 2 points on opposing sides, but you might be 2 points that are more adjacent to one another? Adjacent, at least in the sense that there's a little bit of common ground, or there are things that you do share in common, or have a connection to one another about. Because I feel like we force our way of thinking and our perspectives into direct opposite sides, as opposed to maybe near adjacent or adjacent, and that feeds into our notion that I cannot relate to them at all, because there is nothing about us that overlaps or that is adjoined. They are completely on the opposite side, as opposed to maybe the neighboring vertices of this. Is it always just 2 points across from one another, or is it like a hexagon and there are multiple points, and some points are adjacent to other points on the hexagon? Does that make sense?
Yes, but I would like to say something to that. Because I think it depends on the subject matter. Because
completely.
Because I'm passionate about human rights and animal rights. I have to work with the adjacent common ground tactic with animal rights, because so many people don't care about animals and are not vegan and eat animals and all this stuff. So I can't function in the world if I did this binary thinking. I have to take into account so many things that give me and focus on the common ground, because it's not going to be fruitful or effective to go the binary route. But things like racism or homophobia, I'm much more inclined to be like, better. Like, this is not a new concept for you. There are no real economic or biological reasons for you to have that ideology. And so it's easier for me to let things get defined by that division. So I do think it just depends on the subject matter and how much it affects people you love, and how much it allows you to function in the world, to take a stand versus be lenient and understanding. and find common ground. Common ground's always going to be better, but right now everybody should know better for a lot of things.
Uma's saying the spectrum as opposed to the opposition.
Yeah. But I liked that the divide here is described as one side is like we wouldn't, like, the people who are more progressive and inclusive would not be in a position to be on one side from the others if the other side would include them. We're being excluded. And so we're trying to do this work of including everybody while they're trying to exclude people. And so it creates a division inherently. It's not like I'm choosing a side. I would have all of us be together, but the other side doesn't want me.
And didn't Michael, I remember either a channeling or reading something where Michael said that in terms of the poles, the positive pole includes and makes space for the negative pole, but the negative pole does not acknowledge the positive pole.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like the progressive inclusive side is the positive pole who's like, I know you don't like me, but we can be friends. Where the other negative pole side is like, no, we can't. Because you need to die. You need to be oppressed. And then we're like, well, no, I'm not. So then we just exclude them. And it's like this perpetuating equation. What, Connor? I'm sorry.
Well, it's like churches can exist in a progressive world in a diminished capacity, but they can exist.
Yeah.
Progressives cannot exist easily in a church-dominated world. So the two sides are unequal.
Maureen says it's a younger soul way at looking at and being in the world.
Word. So we're going to wrap up this topic discussion. And as this was just a sample, this was just an example of how we would work through a subject. And in the future, it might be more focused and more of a panel discussion and not so much reading. But that was our topic talk. But we are going to now practice something that we're going to, don't bring them on. Don't do it yet, Amanda. We're going to have interviews and student spotlights. And so now I'm going to introduce the segment that we're going to call Student Spotlight. There she is.
Hi, everybody.
Everybody, welcome Leela to the show. She is a Michael student and an amazing friend, and I love her very much. And she's playing the role of guest spotlight. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Leela.
Well, I'm an artisan warrior cast from Cadre 1 Entity 2. I just moved to Providence, Rhode Island a few months ago. So I am broadcasting live from my art studio in my apartment in Providence. And what else do you want to know?
Do you feel the shift in tone in the climate compared to where you were? Because I remember seeing a lot of like, what the fuck is going on in this town type of thing in the past.
Yes. Yeah, it's a real weird thing to be living in a state like, okay, so for example, this may be an act of futility, but I do sign petitions sometimes when they come into my email. And in the past, I would sign these things and get this like automatic email back from either Marco Rubio or Scott, what's his name? Rick Scott. Ugh, horrible person. And now I'm getting like really nice, like full on like letters back from my senators, and they're like, I completely agree with you. I absolutely support the $15 minimum wage or racial equity or like
oh, wow.
environmental justice and decarceration. I'm like, wow, this is so weird.
So where were you before?
I was in Gainesville, Florida, which is a great town.
Yeah.
But Florida is starting to go in a really dangerous neo-fascist direction. Since Trump, it especially accelerated since the pandemic started. Like the division lines were just drawn so hard.
That's crazy. And that's happened everywhere. Everywhere that they're there, they've become entrenched and much more defined.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's bizarre. I had a really strange moment Well, the minute that I knew we had to leave was the first weekend of June. My husband and my daughter went to the kids' Black Lives Matter protest. And while they were there, I started seeing these reports just on Facebook and stuff that a bunch of trucks flying Confederate flags were running people off the road in Gainesville and kind of around like nearby towns. And then one of them was circling the kids' Black Lives Matter march, according to somebody. And I was like, okay. I felt the like epigenetic Jewish switch flip, and I was like, we're leaving. Everybody update your passports and jump.
I would have felt the same way. Yeah. I'm glad you got on it. Are you happier now where you are?
Well, moving in a pandemic is really weird. I wonder if anyone else here has done that in this time. Like, yes, but with the caveat that like we have more or less the same life and just totally. It's a really nice apartment because I'm really good at apartment hunting.
Well, that's good. Well, I guess it's there for you to explore when we're ready. When we can.
I love being back in New England. I'm enjoying the snow in the winter. It's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Oh wow, Anne. I'd love to hear more about that. Anne said my brother-in-law and his wife had to leave Northeast Florida.
Exit stage left even.
Oh,
so, Lisa,
yeah,
are you
right.
working on any projects right now? Anything
yes,
that's headed towards publication?
Yeah, I am deep in the weeds on what I realized a couple of years ago is book 2 of my New York City trilogy called Victory Parade, which is here. You know what? I don't know if people can see me or can see my screen or anything, but I can show you guys some sample pages. I'll just hold them up to the camera. So this is a graphic novel set. I sold it as being set partially in Brooklyn and partially in Buchenwald concentration camp, but it's really about trauma states and the astral plane in places where people are very, very stressed and suffering. So that's like a particularly intense page.
Are those new colors for you?
Yeah, I've been using watercolor for the past couple of years.
That's
and
nice.
I've been using a lot of metallics also, which is really fun.
Well, I was going to ask you when you said that if any of your metaphysical explorations inform your art or your messages in your work.
Yes.
In any way.
Yeah, it's funny, I would love to hear from other people too, how much you let other people know, like how out you are about Michael stuff and like what you study. Like I've kept it really close for a long time. I share it with people I really trust, but not even all of them. But I've been sort of like sneaking it into my more public facing life in the last few years. And in this book, I mean, it's been impossible not to, because when I started working in watercolor, it was like this portal opened up, and ever since my first daughter died, like those two things are connected. So like the portal that the color work opened up for me was let me rewind a little. Ever since that loss, I felt like I've had one foot on the other side in the world of the dead. And coming from a family of genocide survivors, I think I must have been tapping into that pretty hard. When I started using watercolor, it was like the portal to that opened up and it all started coming through. I stopped being able to do commercial illustration work. But yeah, I started like all my work started to have this kind of metaphysical component to it that a lot of it is nonverbal. A lot of it is happening in the color and in the texture.
That's really cool. Because you had mentioned about the astral part of that art, and that's what prompted me to ask you, because that's really beautiful how you're incorporating that without it being like it's focused on. It's just informing it. And here is a book, one of your previous publications, and we were talking earlier before the show that this is the last time we saw each other in person when you came to New York, and
so
for the
sad.
publication of, I'm gonna let you pronounce it.
Untersaken.
Okay, that's what I would have said, but let's make it fair.
I know it's hard for people to say. So I had one of my big like fears come true at a book event for that book. I was at Miami Book Fair in 2017. Like every event I did for this book, including the one you were at, had this phalanx of like old Yiddish speakers who all looked like my family, like sitting there with their arms crossed, looking at me, waiting for me to speak. So at Miami Book Fair, there's a lot of like old Yiddish speakers there. This lady who, I swear to God, she looked like a long lost great aunt. She had sort of a butterscotch colored bouffant, like my aunt's. She had the coral colored nails and the coral jewelry. And she comes up to me and she goes, "I grew up speaking Yiddish and I've never heard this word. Untersachen." I
Oh,
was like,
yeah. What does it mean?
It's
Tell the people.
it means under things. And it's dialect. I mean, it's not dialect. It's like academic Yiddish. So nobody would have used it like back in the old country.
I cherish this so
Aw.
much. You drew that on the spot.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. I learned how to do that because my first experience really as a professional cartoonist was going to comic book conventions in France. And in France, they expect you to do like an entire masterpiece in
While you're sitting
the
there?
inside of your book.
Oh,
Yeah, and then they'll wait in line, even if you're like some nobody like me, and then they'll stand there like letting it dry and like
Oh my
chatting with their
gosh.
friends. It's wild. People do crazy
That's
stuff.
pretty
So I was
special,
like, oh, I
though.
got to step up. Yeah. It does. It makes the reader feel special when I do that. I like that.
Well, do you have a website or anything that we can plug for you before we move on?
Yeah. LilaCorman.com, although I really need to update it. You can also follow me on Instagram for about, I would say, like half art posts and half just photos of my record collection and really gross mid-century recipes.
Oh, I see those
It's like,
all the time.
I-
And I'm so glad you said that because I wasn't sure if you were just proud of them from family heritage
Oh,
or no.
no!
They are so gross. They're like they're real too. They're real recipes.
They're real. They're real. And no, it's like a weird anthropological thing for me. Like, some of them come from England. That's a whole different kind of gross. But like, the one I posted last night on Facebook that was Frankfurters a la Kling. It's like,
I
what?
did not see this
Or all these
yet.
Jello salads. My people don't make Jello salads, so to me this is kind of exotic.
Gross. Well,
No,
thank you,
no
Leela.
shade, no shade on Jello salad. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you for being our guest spotlight. Would you mind sticking around for the rest of the show?
Oh God, no! Thank you so much for bringing me in, and this is very cool. This whole
Well,
thing
in the
is great.
future, Leela will be a part of the panel whenever Leela's available, and we'll be rotating out panel members in the future. But now
Awesome.
we're going to move on to viewer Q&A. So any of you who have questions, get ready. These are not questions for Michael. They are not questions out of the blue and not complicated. Just ask questions that are based on what we've discussed so far or about the members here. And keep it simple today because it's our test broadcast. And we'll pick and choose from your questions. Viewer Q&A coming up. Where'd Leela go? Oh, there she is. So, first of all, I have a question. How awesome are the little transitions?
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. No.
Beautiful.
Did
I
you
love
make
your
look music?
aesthetic, Troy, really. I am all for that, those colors, those fuchsias and everything. Yeah.
It's pretty.
I love
It made
it.
me happy. I just did it because I wanted to have like some sort of slick element since I knew I was going to be bumbling through. And so it's like, well, at least the graphics could be pretty. So let's take questions from the viewers if there are any.
Well, we're still waiting for, I think, questions to come in through the chat. So
Yeah.
people, if you have a question, please type it in the chat. But I have a question for Leela, because
My
as you can
favorite
probably,
colors.
as you can see, I'm a huge graphic novel and comic book fan, and I was wondering, I love your art, and I love that you use pictures to help convey your stories and to tell your stories. Do you have any comic book authors or artists or graphic novel authors or artists that inspire you?
Oh my God, yeah. I'll preface this by saying that the thing I've learned recently is that as a mid-career artist in any medium, you are too busy to keep up with all the new stuff that's coming out in your field. So there's a ton of stuff that I don't know about that's newer that it looks amazing, and I keep seeing like people posting like, check out this new comic by this person or that person, and there's so much new talent. So what I'm going to tell you is probably a little bit older stuff, but the absolute gold standard, my idols are Jaime Hernandez and Gilbert Hernandez, the creators of Love and Rockets, which is the greatest comic in the English language, bar none. They've been doing it since 1980. They're absolute geniuses, and I cannot recommend them enough. Like if you've never read Love and Rockets, you're just like in for such a huge treat. Start early on and just keep going and don't stop.
Oh.
Raw was also a huge deal to me. It was the great kind of avant-garde comics anthology that came out of downtown New York City in the 1980s, and it dropped into my life like a bomb when I was a teenager. It was like part of this package that came along with like some Sonic Youth albums and a few other things, and like detonated in my life like, this is your future. I would also say Lauren Weinstein, who is a really good friend of mine. Also, I just think she's doing some of the most beautiful, incisive comics about being a mother and an artist. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so
Sure.
much amazing comics being made right now. It's also getting to be a much more inclusive field, which
Yes.
I really love.
Yeah, and I would say even more specifically, like historically relevant comic stories are also becoming a lot more prominent too. And I was wondering if, I don't know if you've ever heard of Art Spiegelman, but he has a graphic novel called Mouse, Maus,
Yes.
and
Yeah, yeah, it's like,
and it's based
even I
on
know that.
it's based on his father's. He basically portrayed his father's retelling of his experiences and his family's experiences in concentration camps, but through the characters of mice and cats and animals. For me, I mean, I have it, and I know within the comic community, it's a very well renowned. Art Spiegelman's a well renowned author out there.
So Mouse is, if you are a Jewish cartoonist who works with Holocaust material, you live in the shadow of Mouse, which is good. That book came out. So Art Spiegelman and his wife Françoise Mouly were the editors of Raw, the avant-garde anthology. Right around the time that he was working on Mouse, and when it came out and won a Pulitzer, that's when Raw started coming out in reprint again, and when I found it. So that would have been like 1990 or so. I just taught Mouse to my undergrads after not having read it for years, and man, it is so well written. I also realized reading it, like, there's stuff in there that I thought everybody knew, but it's actually only stuff you understand if you grew up in a family of Holocaust survivors, and it's like it's
Oh.
completely new information for other people. It's so granular. He goes into so much detail. So yeah, Mouse is amazing.
And George Takei, for any of you who are Star Trek Trekkies, George Takei just published a book. It's called "They Called Us Enemy," and it's about his experiences as a young child and his family when they had to live in the internment camps in California during World War II. World War II or World War One? I think it's World War II.
Yeah, World War II. Yeah.
But a similar sort of historical connection. But I know he's getting a lot of praise for that as well. All right, it looks like we have some questions coming in. Leela, here's one for you. Are you familiar with Charlotte Salomon?
Yeah, I am. Thank you for asking. I have her book, and I actually I'm so daunted by it. I haven't fully read it. It looks so amazing. I need to actually get on it and finish it. It's gorgeous.
Here's a question from Amira. Has anyone here thought that the Trump administration has brought previously hidden racism to light so that many awakened whites would now realize how much our society needs to be healed?
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, go ahead, Leela.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's made it impossible to to have any apathy left. Like it's completely irresponsible to have any apathy about any of this now. Like whatever dodges we had, like, oh, I can't deal with this right now, I'm too tired, like that level of privilege is gone completely,
Yeah.
which is good.
Oh, I
We
love
shouldn't be
that you say
apathetic.
that and the way you described that. That's so true. But I won't give, I mean, it's not like it was a good thing that it happened. We're just making it a good thing. Like when Michael talks about we can't always control what happens to us, but how we respond to it is what matters. That's what I feel like this is about. Like Trump didn't do anything good for us, but because he brought out, or because all this is coming out, let's take it and do something good with it. Let's make a difference and not have apathy and dodges anymore. I am so riled up. Go ahead. I'll just trail off there about this whole subject.
Oh, it's
I'm
so
very passionate
infuriating.
about people and their rights. Were you going to say something, Leela, that I interrupted with my rile?
No, I
Oh,
was just kind of exhaling because I'm with you
oh,
on the being riled up. Yeah, I don't, as a white person, I don't feel like there's anything more I have the right to say.
oh. That's another thing.
like,
I mean, one
like
thing
I
that
just
I
want
can
to
say
get
I've
in line and help
learned,
out.
yeah, what I've learned from this is how much I didn't know and how much I assumed I knew. In terms of being helpful, like I've learned how my ideas of being helpful aren't always helpful, and so that's really been enlightening for me to experience.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
yeah.
From Uma, are you guys feeling better since the inauguration?
Well, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's better than I was, but I'm not going to say.
marginally.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I still feel like it's like I described it as the person who was abusing you is now on the front lawn, but they're still there. Like it's not
Well
gone. Nothing.
said.
Like they're out of the
Well
house
said.
right now, but they're on the front lawn, and we're like looking out the window, going like, "Is it gone yet? Is it over?" But we got
His
to go out
niece
and keep
Marjorie
pushing them
Taylor
off the land.
Greene is still in the house.
Yes, right.
Oh gosh,
Oh, no.
the call is
So
coming from inside the house.
You're right. Some of those people still live with us. I feel
I
like
have
I
a
can
question.
breathe a little better. Like I
Yeah,
sleep better, and I don't have this like, constant like seizing tightness in my chest anymore. But this like the attempted coup a few weeks ago, um, it definitely put me in a place that I haven't left,
yeah,
or
I
at least
agree.
let me know like we have to, like I'm not being very articulate right now.
Yeah, but it was a
It was
reminder that we're not done. It's not over.
no.
I have a question that I'd like to pose to Ro from being outside of America. Does it also affect you in the sense of like a little relief? Do you feel that too?
Of course, because you are my friends and I care about you. And I have friends from other parts of the world and also American, and they had all this anxiety, especially if they are, they are aware and awake in some level that they know that this is wrong. All that was all everything that Trump was doing with his company and his friends and those bad people. It was horrible. It was, yeah, you really can't put that in words, and all that trauma that people are carrying right now, and they have to unpack all these, years to come because it's heavy.
Yeah,
And I feel like, yeah, definitely it feels something different. And I don't know if it's, for example, I get to feel even, when my friends are, through the camera and everything, I get to feel that energy of relief still. I can
yeah,
perceive that and I feel better, because I know they are in a better place right now. Maybe not perfect because we're still working on that and we're still trying to improve and, save ourselves. But, definitely I feel much better. And, I'm so thankful because Biden seems like a decent person, at least in my view. I really don't know about American politics and I really don't want to, give an opinion because I might be very uninformed. So, but yeah, definitely it felt like a huge relief. And also seeing Kamala Harris, like she looks like she exudes that grace and that, authority that comes from, you know, being in alignment, at least, You can sense she really is going to do. She's going to do a really good work, and she's her smile is it's just beautiful and contagious, and you can tell she cares. You know, when she's smiling, you can tell she's being authentic and genuine. And hopefully, I really hope your government does a better job. You know, it's like I saw those memes. You know, that Biden is unfucking this, unfucking this, unfuck this in particular.
Yes, that's true. We're having a lot of unfucking to do.
Well, but also, you know, it's not just an American issue right now, right? Like a neighbor to Peru, a neighbor to where Ro is, Brazil, they have their own right-wing extremism happening, you know, in their government and in their leadership. And there are European countries who have very authoritarian ways of looking at their people. And so we may have dodged a bullet here, but it's still prevalent in many places.
Prevalent. And I think it's happening in Russia, I think. I remember there was some kind of, you know, the protests right now coming to a surface, and the media is, you know, bringing that up, you know, all that problem that was, I think, I don't know.
I just wanted to bring up a couple other, some of these aren't questions, they're just comments, but Maureen said, hell, I've even opened up to 3 new facets during this time rather than my usual one that I am working on and through integrating. These are really interesting times in so many ways.
What's the facets you're talking about?
It's the facets of the role.
Oh.
Each role has 7 facets.
Oh. You guys
like
will have to have that as a topic so I can learn about it.
You channeled it.
Let me tell you that this is going to be really good for me having this show, because I don't read 90% of what comes through, because
you need to.
It's a lot, and I'm barely keep up with myself. Well, we'll deal with facets later.
You'll have to catch the next episode.
Yeah, tune in.
Bobby, force feed him some of his channeling.
Tune in for a discussion on facets at another time. That might be a good topic.
Amira said, I feel bad for Congress people who are now traumatized about returning to work.
Oh, yeah. They're really, really traumatized. And then when they see their fellow politicians being pulled off the floor because they had guns, they're trying to come on the floor with guns. It's like...
Here's a question from Delphi. Are any of you feeling the effects of the infinite soul?
No.
I'd like to know what the effects are supposed to feel like. I mean, does it...
Yeah, that's why I want them to manifest, so I can then identify. Oh, that's what it is.
Gene asks that, is the infinite soul manifesting right now?
No. First of all, the infinite soul is not manifesting right now. The hosts are alive and well, and they are doing their thing and bringing whatever, you know, laying the ground. But manifestation is a really specific thing, and it only lasts a short time, and usually it's going to affect the people mostly around them. I think that as us out here in the world, if there are any effects, it's more, I think it's more in the waves of consciousness that we see like triggered. And so I don't know. I don't think we can feel it. We can mostly like just respond to events that are happening in the world, and that's where it's playing out for us. But I don't feel anything specific. Like the infinite soul's going to bring a teaching of some sort, but we've got a lot of stuff to do and we're busy, and so we'll see that effect at some point, but we don't have to keep like checking in with ourselves and feeling it. I personally don't feel it in that way. I just feel like it's all a big jumble of energy that we have to clean up, and the infinite soul is going to help in some way.
Delphi had like 2 follow-ups. Sorry, I just wanted to show Delphi's follow-up. About the energy, she says, I think they're on track to, yes, but the energy hangs around the physical plane before it fully manifests, right? And then she said, I think Michael said we're meant to feel some effects of the energy before and after the infinite soul.
Oh, well, maybe I'll get a comment about that for our later episodes, but I'm not sure what that's referring to. Probably there's probably like something like chaos or like agitation, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Leela, what were you going to say?
Michael, I'll say it in 1 second, but just to follow up on Troy, what you were just saying, I feel like it would be cool to ask Michael, like, because they're so good at answering categorical questions, like categorically, what are some things that we might experience in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know if it's already been answered. Ask Connor, but
Uh,
but I
maybe
don't.
not
Not
in
that
a
I know of.
specific way, and maybe not related to this time period, right?
Th-
Um, so what I was going to say is just I wouldn't put this down so much to any particular manifestation of anything except what humans are doing right now, but I definitely can feel a sense of extreme potential right now for a lot of
Yes.
things.
Yes,
Like,
I
and I
feel
see it
that
in
a lot. Mhm.
right, and I see it even in like very specific things, like the announcement that GM is going to only produce zero
Yes.
emissions cars
Right.
within a couple of decades,
Yeah.
which is still too little, too late. But like that, it's there's all these things on the table now that no one was talking about a year ago.
That's a really good word, and probably I don't have to do the channeling now. But potential. I mean,
Yes, you
the
do.
emphasis on potential and that state is
Mhm.
part of why I feel better after the inauguration. I feel better about the chaos that's out there now, because there's so much potential now to bring change that
Mhm.
everybody who's paying attention knew we needed.
Mhm.
So that's a really good word to use. It's not like a vibration or a frequency.
No,
It's
it's
potential that we need
what
to
can we
harness.
do? But it's
Yeah.
also, I think there's a warning in it too, because there's a precarity to it. You know, there are a lot of white supremacists with guns out there too.
Yeah.
So it's there's both right now, and I see a lot of decisions being made to pull us in a better direction. Um, of course, I only see a little small amount of what's out there, so you know, in
Yeah.
my
And there'll be
quote
people who
liberal
rise
bubble
up
of
to
reading
try to
actual
stop that.
news.
And Diane said
Right.
that in a recent Infinite Soul session, Michael also said it manifests at a time when it can manifest its teachings the most.
Oh yeah, we don't know when that'll be. But it's also
God, yeah,
not.
who
It's not
knows?
like a big world event like the world
Yeah, we
stops.
won't notice it.
We might not even notice it, but we'll start to see the effects of it if it happens.
Mhm.
Um, I would like to ask some questions really quickly of the viewers, because you're here and you are part of the Patreon community, and I really appreciate all the support for this test broadcast and TLE. But I'd like to ask you, if this was a good experience. You don't have to answer it now. I just want you to be left with these questions so that you can talk about them in TLE or somewhere. But I want to know if you enjoyed the show, if you enjoyed its flow, knowing that it's a test show, and if there's anything we can improve on, like I feel like we didn't give Caitlin a lot of voice, or Ro a lot of voice, and I'd like to get that out there. And I'm just making note that I noticed that. I want to get you guys, everybody, more involved if possible. But give us feedback either here or on TLE about the show, and I'll post the archive version of this show to TLE. We'll make it public, and then we can discuss it there. But I really appreciate any feedback you guys have. But in general, did you enjoy the show? Okay, we'll wait. We'll wait.
And sometimes there's a lag in comments.
Yes. And don't feel pressure. Say no if you didn't.
But I'll be upset if you don't. Well, while we're waiting, we should also give a special shout out to the people working behind the scenes, right? Because their faces aren't on the screens right now, but they help make this happen.
Let's bring them on. So, Brian, put your pants on.
Oh,
All right,
Amanda, you too.
I'm gonna start sharing some of the comments from the viewers, but we can keep talking.
Well, wait, before you use those, I'd like to introduce Amanda. Amanda's been running all the camera work and graphics and stuff behind the scenes.
Great
Brian
job.
is your viewer support. Brian is our hidden camera on the outside, making sure that the show is flowing and looking and just going to give us really inside feedback. And also in the future will be your contact if you have any technical issues yourself. Hi, Brian. Hi, Amanda.
Oh, hi there.
This is
Oh,
a
hi,
nice
Mark.
comment, Troy, from Jean. She said, I really enjoyed this. Thank you. I enjoyed the engagement with the chatters, too.
Mhm.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, the
Mhm.
audience in the chat room is going to make a lot of the show itself too. Delphi is here as well, but does not have the camera on. But Delphi helped coordinate our news segment, and I'd like to give a special shout out to Delphi as well. She's in the chat though. Everybody can send lots of love to Delphi.
Thank
It's,
you.
it's weird that I can't talk back. Oh, and
Oh, I can. Thank
Only
you.
a sage would say that.
and don't worry, we'll be rotating out panel members, and we'll bring you in at some point. Oh, Amira, that's nice to know. Amira said she thought it was long overdue.
Maureen's husband yelled from the other room, I did.
Oh,
Oh.
that's nice.
Oh.
Oh, you feel
Thank
a lot of
you,
love for us.
Lori.
Oh,
Thank you, Maureen.
thank you.
Diane.
Yes, it did
Oh.
go very smoothly.
Okay, I was
It
looking
did.
for what? Go ahead. Who said that?
Nothing.
I was just going to say I was just kind of thinking critical feedback, but this is actually making me feel really good.
Oh, and there's a lot of Amanda and Brian love in the house.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you so
guys.
much for making this all run so smoothly. And also, I wanted to say it was really structured well, too.
That's all
Thank you.
Troy.
Aw.
You would not. It is so bizarre to me that I have these skills that I don't know how to use in other areas. I don't understand it. Like when I get this idea and I can put it all together and make it happen, I feel really confident. But like keeping up with my schedule and timing, I'm like, what the hell happened? I don't know what's going on. But
You're channeling your inner stage manager, and that's a very
Mm.
sage thing.
Mm.
I was thinking almost project manager, but that's a really good sign anyway.
Uh-huh.
Like really, everything went super smoothly from the beginning to end. Like, yeah,
Oh.
amazing.
And StreamYard makes it extremely easy. Like I
Mhm.
just
Oh.
started using StreamYard. Like this was like literally the second time I've really done anything with it. So
it's lovely. So everybody, we're going to wrap up the show here, and we will.
Amira says teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah.
Yeah.
We will. I think it's okay with everybody. We'll post this so that people can get an idea who wasn't here live. They can get an idea of what to look for in February's launch. And so we will make this available. But we're going to wrap up here. And thank you, panelists, producer, support, guest, spotlight. All of you, thank you. And thank you to all the TLE members who are here who helped us test this. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
It's great to see everyone.
Bye.
Stick
Thank
around,
you.
stick around for the credit roll. It's a
Oh.
real thing.
Okay, let's see.